Ever found yourself trapped in a cycle of toxic relationships, unable to break free no matter how hard you try? What if the reason behind this isn't just emotional attachment or habit, but something far deeper, a hidden spiritual bond that keeps pulling you back? Imagine invisible chains tying your heart to people who drain your energy, distort your sense of self, and block your path to peace and freedom. These aren't ordinary connections, they're powerful dark forces that manipulate your soul. This unseen influence can make you crave the wrong people like an addiction, compelling you to stay stuck in painful patterns despite knowing the damage they cause. It's like being caught in a spiritual trap, one that confuses love with control, intimacy with bondage. The more you try to escape, the tighter the grip feels, leaving you emotionally exhausted and spiritually drained. But what if you could recognize these chains for what they really are? What if you could identify the signs that reveal when your soul is tethered by forces working against your well-being? More importantly, what if there was a way to break free from this destructive cycle once and for all? Understanding this hidden dynamic is crucial because it changes everything about how you approach relationships and healing. It's not just about setting boundaries or walking away. It's about confronting a spiritual battle that has real consequences on your heart, mind, and soul. This knowledge empowers you to reclaim your freedom, rebuild your identity, and open doors to genuine, healthy connections. Get ready to uncover truths that many overlook, truths that can liberate you from addiction to toxic ties and guide you toward lasting peace and wholeness. Demonic soul ties are spiritual connections that go beyond natural human relationships, often formed through unhealthy or ungodly interactions. Unlike normal bonds built on trust, respect, and mutual growth, these ties are forged in ways that open doors for negative spiritual influence and control. They act as invisible chains linking individuals in a manner that affects not only emotions but also the very core of one's spiritual well-being. These ties frequently originate from intimate relationships, such as romantic or sexual encounters, where emotional and physical boundaries have been crossed without proper healing or closure. However, they can also develop through other close associations marked by manipulation, codependency, or trauma. The key difference is that demonic soul ties serve to entangle the soul in patterns that prevent freedom, often keeping people bound to destructive cycles and toxic behavior. Because these connections are rooted in spiritual influence, they can cause a person to feel trapped, powerless, or inexplicably drawn to individuals who harm them emotionally or spiritually. This is why many find it difficult to break away from harmful relationships despite conscious efforts to do so. The connection acts as a kind of spiritual addiction, where the soul is captive to unhealthy attachments and cannot easily find relief. The impact of these bonds goes deeper than mere emotional pain. They affect decision-making, self-worth, and can open the door to further spiritual oppression or attack. Often people unknowingly carry these ties with them from past relationships into new ones, repeating the cycle of harm. This is why healing and deliverance become crucial, as simply walking away from a relationship does not sever the spiritual connection formed. Breaking free involves more than physical separation. It requires spiritual intervention and deliberate steps to undo the influence embedded in the soul. Recognizing the existence of such ties is the first step toward liberation. It involves introspection, prayer, and sometimes guidance from spiritual mentors who understand the nature of these bonds. Awareness of these connections also helps in preventing future entanglements by encouraging healthier boundaries and spiritual protection. Understanding that relationships affect not only the emotional but also the spiritual realm empowers individuals to seek wholeness and peace beyond the physical. In summary, these connections are not just emotional or psychological, they are spiritual entanglements that influence one's entire being. Addressing them is essential for reclaiming freedom, healing deeply, and restoring the soul's natural ability to form healthy, life-giving relationships. Soul ties are profound connections that bind individuals together on multiple levels: emotional, physical, and spiritual. These bonds often begin innocently, growing from shared experiences, intense emotions, or physical intimacy. However, the nature and depth of these ties can significantly influence our relationships, sometimes in ways we don't fully understand. At the emotional level, soul ties develop through strong feelings such as love, trust, or even dependence. When two people share vulnerable moments, reveal personal fears, hopes, or dreams, their hearts start intertwining. This emotional intimacy creates a sense of closeness and attachment, making it difficult to separate or move on. The memories and feelings become anchors that hold people together, even when the relationship is unhealthy or painful. The emotional bond is often reinforced by repeated interactions, where shared joys or struggles strengthen the connection. Physical intimacy is another powerful catalyst in forming soul ties. The act of physical closeness, especially in romantic or sexual relationships, releases chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine, which deepen attachment and create sensations of pleasure and bonding. This biological response can create a dependency, making the physical connection feel indispensable. Even after a relationship ends, the body's memory of that closeness can keep a person emotionally tethered, intensifying feelings of longing or obsession. This is why physical relationships can sometimes trap individuals in cycles of unhealthy attachment. Beyond emotions and the physical realm, there is a spiritual dimension to these connections. Spiritual soul ties transcend the tangible and enter the realm of the unseen, where energies, intentions, and spiritual influences interact. These bonds may be formed through shared spiritual experiences, vows or rituals, or even through unresolved conflicts and negative interaction. In some beliefs, these spiritual connections can open doors to influence, positive or negative, affecting a person's spiritual health and emotional well-being. The spiritual tie can linger, pulling individuals toward each other long after any logical or emotional reason has faded. Understanding the multifaceted nature of these bonds helps reveal why certain relationships are so difficult to break free from. The combination of emotional attachment, physical dependency, and spiritual entanglement creates a complex web that can trap a person in unhealthy dynamic. Recognizing how these connections form is the first step toward healing and reclaiming one's freedom, enabling healthier relationships rooted in genuine respect and mutual growth. When invisible forces influence your emotional and spiritual well-being, it often manifests through subtle yet persistent patterns in your life. Recognizing these signs can be the first crucial step toward breaking free from unhealthy attachments that drain your energy and cloud your judgment. One of the most telling indicators is an overwhelming difficulty in letting go of certain individuals, even when their presence consistently causes pain, confusion, or chaos. This isn't simply about lingering feelings or nostalgia. It feels like an internal pull that overrides your rational mind and emotional instincts. Another clear symptom is the repetitive nature of destructive relationships. If you find yourself drawn repeatedly to people who bring toxicity, manipulation, or betrayal, it may suggest a deeper spiritual connection anchoring you to these harmful cycles. These connections can distort your perception of love, making you mistake control, fear, or obsession for genuine affection and care. Emotional exhaustion is a frequent companion to this phenomenon. You might feel drained after interactions, carrying emotional baggage that lingers long after the relationship ends. This fatigue isn't just physical, it seeps into your spirit, leaving you vulnerable to feelings of hopelessness, anxiety, and depression. Often there's a sense of confusion and inner conflict, where part of you wants freedom, but another part resists, creating an ongoing battle within your soul. A significant warning sign is the inability to establish healthy boundaries. You may find yourself repeatedly making excuses for harmful behaviors, or allowing mistreatment to continue without standing up for yourself. This erosion of self-respect often stems from the invisible grip of a bond that undermines your confidence and sense of worth. Sometimes these ties manifest in dreams or thoughts that obsessively focus on the individual, making it hard to concentrate on your own life or personal growth. You might experience sudden mood swings, unexplained emotional triggers, or feelings of heaviness that arise seemingly out of nowhere, particularly after contact with this person or even when thinking about them. Physical symptoms such as unexplained fatigue, headaches, or a lingering sense of unease can also accompany these spiritual connections. Your body can reflect the turmoil of the soul, signaling distress that's not always evident on the surface. Understanding these signs is essential to identifying when a bond has shifted from healthy attachment to a spiritual entanglement that needs addressing. Awareness empowers you to seek the tools and support necessary to regain control, restore emotional balance, and reclaim your freedom. Recognizing the subtle ways these connections hold you captive is the first step toward breaking the chains and stepping into a healthier, more empowered version of yourself. Certain relationships exert an intense hold on us, making it nearly impossible to walk away, even when we know they harm us. This powerful grip goes beyond simple emotional attachment or unhealthy patterns. It stems from deep-rooted spiritual connections that bind individuals together in ways that defy logic or reason. These connections can entangle one's soul, creating a form of addiction that keeps pulling a person back toward toxicity. At the core, these connections manipulate the natural human desire for closeness and belonging, twisting it into a dangerous dependence. The emotional highs and lows experienced within these relationships mimic the patterns of addiction. Just as drugs or harmful habits create chemical dependencies in the brain, These spiritual bonds foster an intense craving for someone's presence, regardless of the damage caused. This craving often overrides rational thought, leading individuals to tolerate mistreatment or toxic behavior because the connection feels too powerful to break. Another key factor lies in the disruption of personal boundaries. When spiritual ties are unhealthy, they blur the lines between individual identities, making it difficult to distinguish one's own needs and feelings from those of the other person. This fusion fosters codependency, where self-worth becomes tied to the approval or attention of the toxic individual. Over time, this erodes confidence and cultivates a cycle of seeking validation through harmful interactions, reinforcing the addictive dynamic. Moreover, these entanglements often carry emotional baggage from past wounds, betrayal, abandonment, or unresolved trauma. The spiritual connection becomes a channel where unresolved pain is repeatedly triggered and magnified. The soul becomes entangled in a pattern of seeking healing or closure through the toxic relationship, yet the cycle perpetuates harm instead of restoration. This paradoxical experience traps the individual in emotional turmoil, creating an illusion of intimacy where none truly exists. The dark nature of these connections also manifests through manipulation and control, often subtle yet deeply impactful. They may involve spiritual oppression or influence that clouds judgment and weakens resistance. This spiritual interference compounds the psychological hold, making it feel impossible to break free by willpower alone. Recognizing these layers is crucial to breaking the cycle. Understanding that addiction to harmful relationships can have spiritual roots allows for a more comprehensive approach to healing. It involves addressing emotional wounds, reclaiming personal boundaries, and engaging in spiritual practices that dismantle these unseen chains. Only by confronting every dimension, mind, heart, and spirit, can true freedom and healthier connections be restored. Demonic soul ties can profoundly affect your spiritual well-being, creating barriers that disrupt your connection with your inner self and with the divine. These invisible bonds often act like spiritual chains, limiting your ability to experience true freedom and growth in your faith journey. When caught in such ties, a person may feel spiritually weighed down, confused, and disconnected, as if an unseen force is draining their energy and clouding their judgment. One of the most significant effects is the erosion of spiritual clarity. Instead of feeling guided by wisdom and peace, individuals bound by these connections often experience turmoil within their spirit. This inner conflict makes it difficult to discern right from wrong, or to hear the subtle promptings that lead toward healing and renewal. The spiritual fog caused by these attachments can stunt personal growth and prevent a person from fully embracing their purpose. Moreover, demonic ties can open doors for negative influences to infiltrate the mind and emotion. This vulnerability increases susceptibility to fear, anxiety, and depression, which not only affect mental health but also hinder spiritual resilience. The soul becomes a battleground where constant emotional struggles suppress the light of hope and faith, leaving the individual feeling isolated and powerless. These bonds can also interfere with worship and prayer life. When your spirit is entangled with unhealthy attachments, it becomes difficult to maintain focus and genuine connection during spiritual practices. This disconnection weakens your ability to receive comfort and guidance, making spiritual disciplines feel burdensome rather than uplifting. Relationships with others also suffer as a result. Because demonic soul ties often distort the way you relate to people, they can lead to patterns of manipulation, control, and emotional dependence. These toxic dynamics damage your sense of self-worth and make it challenging to establish healthy boundaries, further perpetuating the cycle of spiritual bondage. Breaking free from these chains requires acknowledging the profound impact they have on your inner world and seeking deliverance through spiritual means. The process often involves prayer, self-reflection, and sometimes guidance from trusted spiritual mentors. Releasing these ties restores balance, clarity, and peace, allowing your spirit to flourish once again. Ultimately, understanding the spiritual consequences reveals why it's crucial to confront and break these bonds. Doing so not only liberates your soul but also reignites your spiritual vitality, opening the path toward wholeness and a renewed sense of divine connection. When negative spiritual connections take root, their impact goes far beyond the surface of relationships. These bonds subtly infiltrate your mind and emotions, setting off a chain reaction that disrupts your overall well-being. The emotional turmoil caused by such ties often manifests as confusion, anxiety, and a persistent sense of unrest, making it difficult to find clarity or peace in everyday life. One of the most noticeable effects is the constant emotional roller coaster periods. of intense attachment followed by deep despair. This instability can lead to chronic stress, which if left unchecked damages both mental and physical health. The brain struggles to process conflicting feelings, leaving you feeling overwhelmed, drained, and vulnerable to depressive episodes. Such turmoil can also undermine your self-esteem, as the recurring pain from these attachments erodes confidence and distorts your self-image. Beyond emotional exhaustion, these connections interfere with your ability to form healthy relationships. They create a distorted perception of love and attachment, causing you to seek comfort from harmful or toxic individuals repeatedly. This cycle deepens feelings of loneliness and isolation, as authentic connection seems elusive or impossible. The longing to break free is often met with frustration and helplessness, which fuels further emotional distress. Mentally, the grip of these ties clouds judgment and impairs decision-making. You might find yourself stuck in repetitive thought patterns, obsessing over past interactions, or hoping for change where none is possible. This fixation can contribute to anxiety disorders and even lead to unhealthy coping mechanisms like substance abuse or withdrawal from social activities. Spiritually, the presence of such bonds disrupts inner harmony, creating a sense of heaviness or oppression. This spiritual dissonance often reflects in emotional instability and mental fatigue, making it harder to focus, feel motivated, or experience joy. The conflict between your desire for freedom and the invisible hold these ties exert can lead to a deep sense of despair and hopelessness. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward healing. Addressing these issues requires a holistic approach, incorporating emotional, mental, and spiritual care. Techniques such as counseling, mindfulness, and spiritual practices aimed at breaking these bonds can significantly restore balance. By releasing these unhealthy connections, you can begin to rebuild your emotional resilience, regain mental clarity, and rediscover a sense of peace and self-worth that was previously obscure. Ultimately, freeing yourself from these toxic attachments is not just about ending a relationship. It's about reclaiming your mental and emotional health and stepping into a life marked by genuine healing and restoration. Breaking free from spiritual bonds that hold you captive requires intentional action, self-awareness, and a commitment to healing on multiple levels. The first essential step involves acknowledging the existence of these unseen connections and their negative impact on your life. Without recognition, these forces continue to operate in the shadows, keeping you stuck in destructive patterns. Acceptance is not about blaming yourself, but understanding the root cause so you can address it effectively. Next, cleansing your inner space through prayer, meditation, or spiritual rituals is vital. These practices create an environment conducive to healing and protection. Invoking divine strength or higher power assistance helps dismantle the influence these ties have on your emotions and decisions. It's important to regularly engage in spiritual disciplines that renew your mind and reinforce your personal boundaries, fortifying you against future attachments. Confronting and releasing emotional attachments connected to these toxic relationships is equally important. Often lingering feelings such as guilt, fear, or unresolved pain act as fuel for these bonds. Facing these emotions honestly allows you to process them, preventing subconscious energy from sustaining the unhealthy link. Techniques like journaling, therapy, or talking with trusted mentors provide a safe outlet for this emotional release. Taking practical measures to distance yourself from harmful influences is necessary for recovery. This may mean setting clear limits on contact, removing reminders that trigger emotional dependence, or changing environments that perpetuate the cycle. Creating physical and mental space gives your spirit the freedom to breathe and heal without constant reminders pulling you back. Surrounding yourself with supportive, positive influences encourages growth and strengthens your resolve. Genuine connections grounded in respect and mutual care replace the void left by severed ties, helping rebuild your sense of identity and self-worth. Community involvement or joining groups aligned with your values offers encouragement and accountability during this journey. Finally, patience and perseverance are critical. Breaking these bonds does not happen overnight. It requires sustained effort, self-compassion, and trust that transformation is unfolding, even when progress seems slow. Celebrating small victories along the way boosts motivation and reaffirms your commitment to freedom. By integrating spiritual, emotional, and practical steps, you reclaim control over your life and open doors to healthier, more fulfilling relationships. This process restores peace, clarity, and strength, empowering you to live unbound by past entanglements and fully embrace your true potential. Prayer and spiritual warfare are powerful tools in the journey toward liberation from unhealthy attachments and oppressive influences. When facing forces that bind the soul to destructive patterns, it's essential to understand that the battle is not merely physical or emotional, but profoundly spiritual. Engaging in focused prayer creates a direct line of communication with a higher power, allowing individuals to invite divine intervention, protection, and guidance in breaking free from these invisible chains. Prayer serves as both a shield and a sword. It shields by invoking protection against negative spiritual forces that attempt to maintain control over a person's life. It creates a spiritual barrier that discourages further attacks or influence, fortifying the heart and mind with peace and strength. As a sword, prayer actively confronts and dismantles these strongholds by declaring truth, renouncing unhealthy bonds, and commanding release from spiritual captivity. This active declaration is crucial because spiritual bondage cannot be overcome by human effort alone. It requires divine authority to sever ties that have been established over time. Moreover, spiritual warfare involves recognizing that there is an ongoing conflict between forces of light and darkness. This awareness is vital to maintaining vigilance, understanding that persistent negative feelings, compulsions, or addictions may be manifestations of deeper spiritual resistance. Armed with this knowledge, believers can engage in targeted prayers that address specific issues such as manipulation, deception, and control linked to spiritual attachment. Incorporating scripture and affirmations into prayer strengthens its impact, as these words carry inherent spiritual authority. Speaking promises of freedom, healing, and restoration aloud creates a powerful atmosphere that dispels darkness and invites transformation. It also helps individuals reaffirm their identity beyond the influence of destructive relationships and claim a renewed sense of self. Consistency and faith play critical roles in this process. Spiritual battles are rarely instantaneous victories. They require persistent prayer, patience, and trust in the process. Each moment spent in communion with the divine builds resilience and gradually weakens the hold of harmful connection. Ultimately, the combined practice of prayer and spiritual warfare equips individuals with the tools to reclaim autonomy over their emotional and spiritual well-being. It fosters an environment where healing can take place, boundaries can be firmly established, and genuine freedom from toxic influences can be realized. This journey invites a transformation that extends beyond just breaking chains. It leads to a restoration of wholeness, peace, and empowerment. Breaking free from harmful attachments is only the first step. The real transformation begins when you actively seek out connections that nurture your growth and well-being. Healthy bonds offer support, encouragement, and genuine respect, creating a foundation where you can thrive emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Building these positive relationships requires intentionality. It starts with self-awareness, understanding your own needs, boundaries, and values. When you know what you deserve and what aligns with your inner truth, you can more clearly recognize when others uplift or diminish you. This clarity acts as a filter, guiding you toward individuals who contribute positively to your life, rather than those who drain your energy or exploit vulnerabilities. Effective communication is crucial in fostering meaningful connections. Open and honest dialogue encourages trust and mutual respect, allowing both parties to express their feelings, set limits, and resolve conflicts healthily. When conversations are grounded in empathy and active listening, relationships become spaces of safety and growth, instead of tension and misunderstanding. Equally important is surrounding yourself with people who model emotional maturity and kindness. These individuals inspire you to become your best self, challenge you constructively, and celebrate your successes without jealousy or competition. Their presence reminds you that relationships are meant to elevate, not to suffocate or control. Cultivating new, healthy connections often means stepping out of comfort zones. It might require engaging in new communities, hobbies, or spiritual gatherings where like-minded individuals gather. Such environments foster authentic bonds based on shared interests and mutual respect, allowing trust to develop naturally over time. Healing from previous toxic entanglements also involves forgiveness, not necessarily of the other person's actions, but of yourself, for staying in harmful situations. Letting go of guilt or shame clears emotional space for healthier attachment. Remember, self-compassion fuels your ability to form and maintain positive relationships. Lastly, maintaining a balanced sense of independence within relationships is vital. While closeness is important, retaining your individuality ensures that connections do not become codependent or restrictive. Healthy ties empower you to grow both together and separately, respecting personal freedom as much as shared commitment. By consciously nurturing connections that reflect respect, honesty, and care, you lay the groundwork for a fulfilling relational life. This shift not only improves your emotional well-being, but also strengthens your spiritual resilience, enabling you to thrive free from past bondage and open to the richness of genuine love and companionship. Throughout history, countless individuals have shared powerful stories of liberation from unhealthy attachments that once held them captive. These accounts offer hope and insight into how breaking free from deep spiritual bonds is not only possible but transformative. Many of these testimonies reveal journeys marked by struggle, self-discovery, and ultimately, spiritual renewal. One compelling example comes from the story of King David, a man deeply flawed yet profoundly favored by God. His relationship with Bathsheba started with temptation and sin, creating a tangled web of emotional and spiritual consequences. Yet through genuine repentance and seeking God's mercy, David was able to sever destructive ties and restore his relationship with the divine. His life illustrates how recognition of one's mistakes, combined with sincere remorse, can break the hold that past connections have on the soul. Similarly, the Apostle Paul's letters frequently address the need to break free from harmful influence. He urges believers to cast off old ways and embrace a renewed identity in Christ. This transformation often requires confronting painful past relationships and releasing any spiritual or emotional chains attached to them. Paul's teachings emphasize that freedom comes through faith and intentional surrender to divine guidance. Modern-day testimonies echo these biblical lessons. Many share how they were trapped in cycles of emotional dependency, often unable to walk away from relationships that caused pain and confusion. Through prayer, counseling, and spiritual disciplines, they found strength to confront these invisible bonds. The process sometimes involved confronting deep fears and insecurities, but it ultimately led to healing and restoration. One common thread in these stories is the power of forgiveness, both toward others and oneself. Forgiveness acts as a key that unlocks the chains binding a person to unhealthy connections. It allows the heart to release resentment and bitterness, clearing the way for genuine freedom. Another vital aspect is the role of community and spiritual support. Being surrounded by trusted individuals who encourage growth and accountability helps reinforce the decision to break away from destructive attachments. This network often becomes a source of strength when the temptation to return arises. Ultimately, these examples and testimonies serve as a reminder that no one is beyond redemption. Even the most entrenched spiritual ties can be undone with courage, faith, and perseverance. The journey to freedom may not be easy, but it is always worth pursuing, opening the door to renewed purpose, peace, and authentic relationships. To safeguard your spirit and emotions from harmful connections in the future, it's essential to cultivate strong personal boundaries and spiritual awareness. Begin by understanding your worth and refusing to engage in relationships that drain your energy or compromise your values. Being selective about who you allow close to your heart creates a shield against unhealthy attachments. Developing a consistent practice of self-reflection helps you recognize warning signs early on, patterns of control, manipulation, or emotional dependence that often lead to binding ties. Strengthen your inner resilience through prayer, meditation, or other spiritual disciplines that ground you and clarify your sense of identity. Surround yourself with positive influences who encourage growth and uplift your spirit. Seek communities or support systems aligned with healthy values to reinforce your commitment to emotional and spiritual well-being. When you become aware of past wounds or vulnerabilities, addressing them through counseling or deliverance ministries can prevent those weaknesses from being exploited again. Finally, maintain vigilance in guarding your heart and mind by staying connected to your spiritual source. Empower yourself to discern relationships that nurture rather than hinder your growth. This proactive approach builds a protective barrier, ensuring your future connections foster freedom, peace, and genuine love. Breaking free from the grip of destructive spiritual bonds is not just a possibility, it's a necessity for anyone seeking true emotional and spiritual freedom. These invisible chains can stealthily undermine your well-being, keeping you locked in cycles of pain, confusion, and unhealthy attachments. Recognizing their presence is the first vital step toward liberation. It requires honesty with yourself about the patterns in your relationships and the ways you may have been unknowingly tethered to influences that harm rather than heal. Healing goes beyond mere distance or changing circumstances. It demands a deep, intentional effort to address both the emotional wounds and the spiritual roots of these connections. This process often involves confronting uncomfortable truths, seeking guidance through prayer or counseling, and embracing forgiveness, both for yourself and those involved. It's a journey that may test your strength but ultimately restores your sense of identity, and empowerment comes from reclaiming control over your heart and mind. When you choose to release what no longer serves you, You make space for healthy, life-giving relationships to enter. Boundaries, self-awareness, and spiritual vigilance become your allies in maintaining this newfound freedom. By cultivating these practices, you not only protect yourself from repeating past mistakes, but also build resilience against future challenges. Remember, your worth isn't defined by any toxic connection or unhealthy pattern. True connection uplifts, encourages growth, and respects your whole being. Walking away from harmful ties isn't a sign of weakness, but an act of courage and self-respect. With awareness and faith, you can overcome these invisible chains, stepping into a life marked by clarity, peace, and authentic love. The path to breaking these bonds may not be easy, but it is transformative. You deserve freedom that empowers you to thrive emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Take this knowledge as your starting point, your gateway to lasting healing and genuine relationships that honor your true self.